Okay, so I have the dubious honor of being the wrap-up, except for the actual wrap-up. And anyway, so I hope everybody's been enjoying the conference so far and learning a lot, because I have learned a lot so far. And I am one of the ombuds at Lehigh. We have 3 of them. I think there's some other ombuds in the audience. You want to ombud? You want to raise your hands? There we are. Does everybody know what ombuds is, or no? Yeah, yeah, no. We are mediators. We mediate. Most ombuds at most institutions mediate every conflict that there is. We are available for conversation. We are available for, we're not really supposed to give advice, but we can help you come up with options. We're available just for you to vent. We're available for all of those things. We are confidential. We are neutral. We are independent. And we are informal. So all of our records, like all mediators, are destroyed afterwards. And so we are available. And most universities, well, I shouldn't say most, some universities have them. All universities should have them because they're very useful. And sometimes our roles are relegated to different aspects of the community, but mine is I can talk to anyone. So I just had to throw a little plug in there for Ombud. And I want you guys to think about what academic freedom is. Does anybody want to say what they think it is? Anyone want to volunteer a thought about academic freedom? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. That's very good. That's good. I don't know the history of it. Anybody else want to volunteer a thought about academic freedom or what it means or what it means to you or any of those things? Anyone want to try and, yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there are some limits to academic freedom, of course. So we've all heard the example of yelling fire in a crowded theater. So you're not allowed to just run around and proselytize or insult people or cause a riot or cause trouble or yell at people. Or, those things are not allowed. But academic freedom does give us the right to work within our professions to try and investigate some things which may be really controversial. So that's the usefulness of academic freedom. We can move to the next slide if this is problematic. Okay, so this is the AAUP for the international people that are joining us. The AAUP is the, I can't remember, American Association of University Presidents. I could not remember the first word. And this is how they define it. There are a lot, like with all these things, there are lots of different ways to define academic freedom. So as we were talking about, it's the business of a university to provide that atmosphere which is most conducive to speculation. So remember, it's the universities, ultimately the university, that takes on this responsibility. Speculation, experiment, and creation. So the university is to create an atmosphere in which there prevails the 4 essential freedoms of a university. And these are who may teach, what may be taught, how it should be taught, and who should be admitted to study. Now you'll notice that these don't really refer to research. This is the professor's thing. This is more about study, but somewhere in there to study, you might get there. See if we have another one. I went backwards, sorry. And so let's think a little bit about academic freedom. What I want us to do here, sorry, because I'm a professor, so I will always make you work. I want you to think about a time where you were asked to taught or promote an idea or a concept that you may or may not have aligned with, okay? And I want you to turn to the person next to you and talk about what that was like. All right, you ready? Get one in your head. Ready? Go. One of the other reasons that we need academic freedom, and once again, this is for people that are probably outside of the country, you're probably familiar with all of these. We are recently experiencing a real curtailing of academic freedom. The DEI initiatives that have been rolling out over the past decade or two and being rolled back in Florida and in Texas, and also the rights of the LGBTQIA community, and book banning, which is appalling to me is also going on throughout the country in all kinds of libraries, from public libraries to K through 12 to some, I don't know for sure that college and universities, but I'm sure in Florida there are some of those issues. So it's really important that we have not just academic freedom, but that freedom of speech, which the very people who seem to say that they would like freedom of speech are quick to curtail it for us. Okay, so let's move on here. So academic freedom, here's another. So let's see. Do you feel that this is academic freedom or not? So Texas A&M suspended a professor, and they accused this professor of criticizing the lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick. What had happened was a student, she went to a medical school, she was talking about the use of drugs and fentanyl particularly, and how there were ways in which you could combat that with Narcan and those kinds of things. In her conversation, she also mentioned that the legislature had chosen to go a different way. And I'm paraphrasing this because that is what she talks on. Her lecture was not recorded. One of the students in there had a parent who was associated with the lieutenant governor, went back and told the lieutenant governor that this woman had criticized him when she did not specifically, according to her, call this out. And as a result, within 5 days, the professor who was accused was suddenly suspended. Thoughts? Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Going to just stick my neck out right away and say that's academic freedom.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to comment on that? Yes. It was a medical school class on drugs of abuse for students who were studying addiction and those kinds of things, right? Okay. So I would agree with you that it's academic freedom. She was giving a lecture that she had been paid to give a lecture on about the drugs that the medical students were trying to learn about. So I would say she was within her rights, and according to her, she did not necessarily call him out. So she wasn't accusing or calling fire in a crowded theater. She was just doing her job. This is a quote from a paper of Leah Hollis, who is another member on the advisory board. One of the reasons that we need to be careful with academic freedom is that when you restrict the language and you restrict people from speaking, that allows the bullies to be louder and louder. And so that's something to really think about in terms of academic freedom. Here's another example. So we'll see if this is. This is Samia Halabi. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She is at Indiana University. She is an artist. You can see her art, an example of her art. Obviously, we're not seeing all of it. Her artwork, her retrospective, which she was 3 years in the making, was canceled 7 weeks before it was to show up. And the university gave no reason for the cancellation. They just canceled it. She wrote to them, she asked for a response. There was no notice. There never has been since this has canceled. What do you think about this as academic freedom? This happened, yes, in either 2023 or 2024. And you can imagine what this is related to.
Make sure you get the mic. Who wants to guess?
Anybody want to comment on this? How about this? Turn to your neighbor and talk to them about this issue. So what I'm going to talk about next is you're going to see WPA a lot. WPA refers to Writing Program Administrators. And so I want to use this as a case to think about more about academic freedom. It's a field where people train the students to write properly. Before I read this paper, I wasn't thinking about it at all as a field. Apparently, it is a field that has pulled itself together. There are writing program administrators, and somebody went out and surveyed them to find out exactly what was going on. in the paper that I read, they were looking to see how those writing program administrators were received at their universities. And they didn't, or if they did, I didn't say which universities they took, which is kind of irrelevant, but the comments that you're going to see are coming from those universities that they surveyed. So we're going to look at them in two different ways. First, we're going to look to see whether or not those comments represent workplace bullying. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about workplace bullying, and I'm thinking that you have kind of a general baseline for a definition for workplace bullying, because that's been the entire day has been that. One thing to remember here is that workplace bullying includes negative behaviors, and one definition that we might apply here is these behaviors must form a pattern. So it's not just if somebody walks up to you and just does this to you once, it's more that it's a repeated, frequent thing that happens to the point where you feel very targeted. And the other thing is mobbing. So mobbing is a form of bullying where a group will get together and mob, and mobbing can go up and down. So it's not just one person against you or you against your supervisor. It's more like a group, department, a system is working against you. So we're going to look at mobbing, and we're going to look at workplace bullying. And we're going to look at this bullying and mobbing versus academic freedom. And so one way to think about it is when negative behaviors inhibit your choices in relation to your teaching, your research, and your program administration, then we're talking about academic freedom. That's where we really are. So we're going to try and see if they overlap. We're going to try and see if we can see how they overlap. So what I want you to do again is see if you can get in a tiny little group. And I'm going to give you some things to look at and see if you can figure out whether or not these things are bullying, mobbing, or academic freedom. One of the reasons why this is important that they point out in the paper at the end is the following. When people are charged with academic freedom, the university tends to respond to that with more rigor and with more interest than when people are accused of bullying or mobbing, because those comments are a little bit more vague in their minds than academic freedom. And so that's the sentence. Let's see if we can go back. Here it is. So this is a reason to kind of make this distinction, because academic freedom resonates a little bit more, even though it's more as ambiguous as bullying and mobbing, as you saw. It tends to resonate more with administrators than bullying or mobbing. And so it's easier to see that as an issue. And that's why sometimes people will land on that versus I've been bullied, I've been mobbed. Especially if it's an issue that has to do with tenure and promotion, say, which is another thing that faculty really do have a handle on. So if someone decides that your research really is not a field that could be tenured or promoted, or that your scholarship is something that really is not valued, they can deny you tenure and promotion, which could be seen as a violation of academic freedom. If you're telling them this is a research that's valuable in my field, and that was the point that the writer group was trying to say. In our field, reading these papers and getting students up to snuff is the work that we do. That's our scholarship. And they were continually told in the paper, that doesn't count, that's not real research, that's not scholarship. And so then some of them were asked to just leave and find another program. And then that's tenure and promotion issues. These are job issues that we're talking about here. So this is just the tip of the iceberg with academic freedom. We always think it's like being able to go out and say, I'm going to study this. But it's a little bit deeper than that. And that's why I like this paper. So that's what I had to say today. Questions, comments, thoughts?